Hello, welcome back to the CITADEL channel. Today we're going to be looking at the new Lil Nas X record, Montero, that came out today. So I've already listened to it 4 times. What we're going to do in this video is we're going to go over my thoughts on each of the tracks. I'm going to break down a very brief overview for each track and give my thoughts and opinions on it. And then I'm going to give you a little explanation of my thoughts on the album as a whole, and then we're going to rate it or give it a ranking, okay? What we're going to start with is I'm going to cut now to a clip of me finishing my second listen of the album. Yo, just finished listening to the new Lil Nas X album, Montero. Just listened to it twice. I'm on my run, which is why I'm looking all red and sweaty. But I'm so confused on whether I like it or not. I think it's a confusing album in terms of how I feel about it. I don't know yet. I'm gonna have to give it a few more listens. Half of the album is definitely music to run to. The other half of the album definitely isn't. And I don't know that Lil Nas X had one genre in mind when he made it. Fair play to him. Oh, look at the guy in the background. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to start with the first track on the album, which was Montero, which is obviously the name of the album, Lil Nas X Montero. The album cover's going to be here somewhere. But the opening track was Montero, in brackets, Call Me By Your Name, which was obviously one of the biggest songs, has been one of the biggest songs of the year so far, is one of the singles that he released before this. Very much his biggest song since Old Town Road. Not a lot to say about it. You will have heard this song. If you haven't, you should go check it out. It's got a wild music video. It's fun, it's loud, it's energetic, it's full of charisma, everything that Lil Nas X tends to be. And I think it's a good song. I like it. Okay, moving on to the second track, Dead Right Now. So this sees Lil Nas X talking about his interactions with a number of different people that have kind of, I guess, sought to profit off of his fame and his success, I guess. Since he's made it big, he's talking about how people have tried to talk to him now and care about him now and pretend like they actually care about him and his situation now when they didn't beforehand, when says on this song things like he used to be suicidal and things like that. It's nothing new in terms of the hip-hop sphere. We hear artists talking about this all the time, but I did like how he did it. It was quite nice. There were some gospel-esque backing vocals in the production at points, and that did kind of elevate the level of the song for me, and I thought it was quite good. I did actually enjoy this song more the more I listened to it. So when I first heard it, I was a little bit indifferent on it, and then the second time I heard it, I was like, oh, it's a decent song, this. And then by my final listen, I was like, actually, I really quite like this song. Third song, Industry Baby, featuring Jack Harlow, another really big song that had been released before the album came out by Lil Nas X. This is a song that features Jack Harlow, obviously, and Jack Harlow gives quite a nice, charismatic verse on here that does add to the song and does give a little bit of something different. I liked the horns, some really powerful horns that were mixed into the production on here, and that is a highlight of this song. And also, Lil Nas X, or whoever kind of ordered and produced the track, inserted a really good transition from the previous track, Dead Right Now, into Industry Baby, so I thought that sounded really good. It was a very vibrant song. It was a good song. That's why he chose it to be one of the singles beforehand. Okay, then track number 4, That's What I Want. So this sees Lil Nas X singing mainly over quite a nice acoustic and kick drum based beat, something that we've not really heard from Lil Nas X thus far. He talks quite personally about wanting somebody to love and struggling to find that, but that's all he seems to be able to think about. So it's quite a personal song on the album in terms of content. Then we go on to the 5th song on the album, The Art of Realization. And this is just like a 24-second interlude where Lil Nas X seems to be questioning his direction in life and where he's going and what point he wants to get to and where he's going to get to. So it was interesting, but like I said, it was only a 24-second interlude. Then into number 6, track number 6, Scoop, featuring Doja Cat. So this sees Lil Nas X talking about how he's basically worked to stay relevant and how he's tried really hard since his debut mixtape, Nazarati, I think it's called, and he references that in the chorus of the song, and how he's talked about where he's come from and he's worked really hard to stay relevant since then. And it's kind of highlighted by the inclusion of Doja Cat on the song, who very much blew up quite quickly, had a hit song or kind of that meme song with the moo, the cow song, and since then she's been really big, been staying really quite relevant. And I'm not saying that they haven't worked hard, I'm not saying they were just kind of overnight successes or whatever, but they both, Lil Nas X and Doja Cat, did seem to blow up out of nowhere. So it's really interesting that she'd be included on a song talking about staying relevant. Then we go on to track number 7, One of Me. This says it features Elton John, but I am fuming because he lied. And where's Elton John? The track that says it's featuring Elton John. I didn't hear him. I listened to it twice and I couldn't hear him. So confused by that. Yeah, I still couldn't find it. When I got back from that run, I looked up the lyrics on Genius and couldn't see... It still says featuring Elton John, but I couldn't see Elton John on the kind of lyrics at any point. So very confused about that. I'm not sure where he was. Maybe it's just my version on Tidal. Maybe there's an inclusion that I'm missing or something. But let me know if you have any idea why that's like that down below. Maybe I've just missed something. Either way, he talks about being able to make a career for himself after the hype of Old Town Road. He talks about how people doubted that he'd be able to do it, and yet here he is, being very successful, and fair play to Lil Nas X, can't doubt his success, and that he like the last track I was talking about, has very much stayed relevant for lots of different reasons, and lots of different tracks that have blown up out of nowhere. So I think One of Me was a decent song. I thought the beat was energetic, it was loud, it was very much in that vein of Lil Nas X music that he likes to make. It was good. It probably wasn't one of my favourite produced songs, in that I think it could have been a little bit more experimental or a little bit more different and stood out a little bit further, whereas this track I do think blended into the rest of the track list. So then we move on to track number 8, Lost in the Citadel. I think this is where basically I started to get a little bit confused. Yeah, so this song was definitely interesting. It saw Lil Nas X take on a more kind of emo rock, punk rock style, genre, sound of music, whatever. Both in terms of the production, had these kind of distorted guitar riffs and this echoey, spacey mix throughout the track. And then the vocals from Lil Nas X were also a little bit more punk rock stylized. But it was almost like he didn't want to fully commit to that, or wasn't able to. He wanted to achieve this sound, but maybe his voice didn't quite match it, or he wasn't fully going for it, and there wasn't the energy that you get in a more punk rock song. So it was a little bit confusing, and I wasn't quite sure. Still, I'm not quite sure how to feel on this track. Then we move on to track number 9, $sign Slime, featuring Megan Thee Stallion. So this was a return to what I expect to hear from Lil Nas X. It was loud, it was big, there were some nice trap drums, interesting kind of muted horn sound mixed into the production. Megan Thee Stallion gave quite a charismatic verse. Lil Nas X was being quite charismatic, and the whole song was talking about basically being wealthy, successful. It was quite a braggy song. And it was good. It's something that I can definitely see. It's one of the songs I can definitely see being big off of this album. There's a couple on here, but this is one of the ones I expect to see do numbers in terms of streaming and sales after the album. So moving on to track number 10, Tales of Dominica. So this is a really interesting song, because this is where the whole vibe of the album seems to change a little bit, in terms of there seems to be a bit of a switch of direction for the production generally. We'll get onto that in a bit. And there being a bit more of a mellow vibe and a bit more of a difference sounding to the project and to the album. I liked hearing Lil Nas X talk about being vulnerable and his mental health worries, concerns, and it was quite a, like I said, quite a vulnerable track, and it was a really interesting comparison to the track just before that had been very braggy, very him talking about being really great and being really wealthy and successful, and then we slip straight into a song where he's talking about his vulnerabilities and how conscious he is of his mental state and how that's not always the best. So I liked the vulnerability in this. I liked the track. I thought it was fascinating. I think the production, I wasn't sure how to categorise it. It felt like something that maybe the Vamps would try produce, but then it changed towards the end, and there was this really dramatic string line that Lil Nas X or whoever produced the track kind of slid into it, and it was very, very odd and very weird in terms of production. But it was an okay song. It was an okay song. Maybe it just wasn't my favourite, but it might be one that grows on me, so keep that in mind. Then we go on to track number 11, The Sun Goes Down. This was very interesting in terms of hearing Lil Nas X talk about his sexuality and how he struggled with that and being who he is. And it's got these plucky guitar lines that maybe weren't quite enough for me. I think this was another track that in terms of production I was a bit iffy on, but in terms of content and his lyrics I found it really interesting, really personal. I think that was really good. It was something Lil Nas X managed to do throughout this album, have lots of little personal moments. Track number 12, Void. I did like, this was a lot more of a chill track from Lil Nas X, and I did like it. I liked the chill kind of direction that Lil Nas X was going in. I thought that it sounded really interesting. His voice in the low register sounds really nice. He's got a really good deep voice, and it works well on some songs with his kind of deep singing, and I liked it. I thought it sounded good. He's reflecting on his past self, maybe. I thought it was a little bit ambiguous, but possibly his past self, where he's come from and he's still struggling with things and the struggles that he's got now. And like I said, the second half of the album, the direction very much seemed to change in terms of content and sound. Then we go on to track number 13, Don't Want It, and this is where, again, really confused, because I feel like this track would have best fitted after the Megan Thee Stallion song, or the song with Megan Thee Stallion on. If he'd put this song after that, I feel like the track listing would have felt a lot more cohesive, because this song was all of a sudden a massive switch of energy, and it went really loud and really vibrant all over again. And it sounded good, sounded interesting, and he was still talking about being very reflective and how he's changed as a person and everything. So I feel like that would have been a good transition song from the first half to the second half, and we would have got this idea of this duality of Lil Nas X as an artist and a person, and it would have been really interesting seeing one side of his life and another side of his life, his confidence, and some people might see it as arrogance, and then his kind of insecurities and vulnerabilities. And I would have liked it to be more cohesive in terms of that, but that's more just a track ordering thing for me, so maybe I can't look into that too much. Then we're going to track number 14, which has a very dramatic sounding track. The vibe comes down again in terms of energy and loudness, but there is a very heavy rock influence in this song with its guitar lines, and there's some really dramatic vocals from Lil Nas X. It talks about some partner that doesn't seem to love him, and again, it's another quite personal moment on the track listing for me, and for Lil Nas X clearly. I think that, although I said a minute ago that Lil Nas X has a really nice voice, which I stick to, he does have a nice voice, I think on this track, it would have worked a lot better if he'd gotten somebody with a more rock stylized voice to do the hook on here. I feel like Lil Nas X was reaching and didn't quite achieve the magnitude or the drama that he was going for in this song on the chorus, and I think that if he'd gotten somebody who's a bit more rock influenced, it might have worked better. Or even if he wanted to stay in the hip hop lane, somebody like Post Malone might have worked really nice on this, and I think that would have elevated this track a lot for me. And then we go on to the final track of the album, track number 15, Am I Dreaming, featuring Miley Cyrus. So this was just a genuinely beautiful acoustic ballad kind of duet with Miley Cyrus. There was some really nice vocal layering that I noticed on this track, and this is another song that I think, with Miley Cyrus's inclusion and with relaxed poppy vibe that Lil Nas was going for on this track, I can see this doing really well in terms of sales post release. So overall, how's I feeling about the album? I think that Lil Nas X has proven that he is a pop star. He is absolutely a star. He is very much main character energy. Everybody likes to think at some point that they're the main character in the story, but Lil Nas X seems to be the main character in everybody's story at the minute. You can't get away from his music videos, his releases. He's a great character on Twitter, and the rollout of this album has been really interesting. I think that I'm looking forward to Lil Nas X's progression and where he goes after this album, and it'll be really interesting to see what people think about this album overall. I liked it. I thought there were some spots that were a little bit disappointing or a little bit flat, but I think generally it was a good switch up from some of the things that he's done before, in terms of there were half of the tracks were very much sticking to that pattern of loud, vibrant, in-your-face production, singing, everything that you could get out of a Lil Nas X song before the release of this album. But then there were loads of songs that felt a lot more personal, and I think he did a very good job of keeping this as quite a personal project, and I enjoyed it for that reason. So overall, I was feeling a 6.5 out of 10 for this album. That might change, that might go up, that might go down, I'm not sure. I've got a guy coming up that's going to be cycling now past me, so this is going to be super awkward, so let's just stay quiet and watch him go over my shoulder. Look at that man, there's a real hero. Please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed this. You don't have to agree with me, but if you enjoyed this, please subscribe. It would be awesome to see some new faces down below. Take care.